for us to be here on your Mission Sunday. We're missionaries ourselves. As Tina said, I've been in Taiwan just over 9 years now serving as a missionary. So missions is one thing that still gets me excited. And I love the theme we have for this year, so all can hear. If we can throw up that PowerPoint, that is the reason we do missions. You know, when Jesus came to earth, he talked to us too about the reason why we exist. What is your responsibility as a human being during the short life we have here on earth? And Jesus actually broke it down for us in Matthew chapter 22, and he said that people have two main purposes, two main goals for living, and you'll see them on the next slide, and they are to love God and love people. You've probably heard this before. Now, if you're like me, the first one, love God, has been the simpler of the two throughout my life. I was blessed to grow up in church, know Jesus from a young age, and I have always loved him. Not to say we haven't gotten in our squabbles over the years or had my frustrations, God, where are you? I've had those moments, but the thing is, God is loving, he's patient with me, and he's always found me running back to him every time. But the second of these commands, to love people, has been the more difficult one because people are not always as merciful and patient as Jesus is to me. But today, being our missions convention, we know that missions is actually the most practical expression of God's command to love people. It's the way we do it. I remember I've taught missions classes several times here in Taiwan at our Assemblies of God Bible School and at some ministry schools in Taiwan. And I love whenever I teach people about missions to start out with the first class, what is your motivation for doing missions? Why do we do missions? And I love to have students, I'll have them like write down the different reasons on Post-it notes and stick them on the wall. And I'll have them list the most important reasons at the top and maybe the not as good of reasons on the bottom. And it's interesting to see what they come up with. Most good Christian students, somewhere at the top will be, the Great Commission or responsibility, obedience. It's our duty as a Christian to do missions because Jesus told us to. And that is a great reason. He did tell us to. And then as you go kind of further down, there'll be some okay reasons, like, my pastor told me to, and so I'm listening to them. And then towards the bottom, it starts to get worse, like, I feel guilty if I don't do missions, or I really like to travel, so I signed up for a missions trip. There's all types of reasons that we can do missions, and some of the reasons are better than others. But there is one reason that is better than all the rest, and this is the same reason that God chose to do missions to us when he sent us Jesus as a missionary here on earth. You guys remember why God sent Jesus here? What was his motivation? If we look at John 3:16, some of you guys might be familiar, he tells us that for the certain particular reason is why he sent Jesus, his only son, so that people could be reconciled to him. You guys familiar with this verse? For God so something the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. Was it, maybe God felt bad for the world, or he was bored, or he felt obligated because, he made us and we messed up, and so I'll just, try to fix them. But most of us in here probably know it was that God so loved the world. That was God's motivation for doing the most radical thing in human history, for sending Jesus from heaven to earth, talk about a cross-cultural experience, so that mankind could be reconciled for him. And I want to share with you guys in here today that, it's one thing to sign up for a short-term missions trip. It's one thing to give in a missions offering or to make a missions pledge or to pray for missions. These are all good things that we should be doing. But the heartbeat of missions, the foundation of missions, should always be a genuine love and interest in people, because that is why Jesus did missions. My husband is here with us today, and he actually grew up in church just like me. He's a PK, a pastor's kid. So he heard all the mission stuff, the Bible stories from the time he was little. But as he's going to share with you in a minute, as he was growing up in the church, the love of God was not always real to him. But it was actually through his experience with missions, particularly a short-term missions trip, where he began to realize how real God's love was for people. And it's what changed his life and eventually called him into full-time ministry. So David's going to come up for a minute and share with you about how God's love impacted him. And he's going to somehow pass off the sleeping baby. We're going to see how that works. Yeah? Oh, you want to hold her? Or? You want me to hold it for you? Or pass it?
I need to take my note. I don't really like this, but my wife asked me, I need to read my note or she will kill me. So I always pass time sharing some stories. So yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, it's great to be here, share some our story to you. So I grew up in the church. My dad is a pastor, but I'm not always close to God. You know, the people can go to church, but no relationship with Jesus. So be careful, your kid. But fortunately, when I was around 20-something, 10 years ago, a pastor encouraged me to go on a short-term mission trip. It was 2011. And do you remember there's a big tsunami hit Japan? So I went there, joined them and helped the team up there. When I got there, I had never seen anything like it in my life. Whole towns were complete, destroyed, and the smell of death was in the air. I still can remember many of the survivors were older people who had lost their families. So one of our job was to look through the ruins of the house to find picture. Because a lot of older people, they don't have social media, they don't have cell phone, so they need something to remember their family. So we need to find those pictures for them. You know, it's so hard for me because every time when you find a picture and you have to go give back to those family, the people, and they will cry and cry when they receive the picture. I don't know how to help those people and began to fall into a deep sadness. You know, I started afraid to see those people. I should go there and help them and encourage them, but you know, when you in that situation, everyone is so sad, it kind of dropped me into a big sorrow with those people. So I felt hopeless. I don't know, what should I do? But there was one group of people. They seemed to know what they were doing. Even in the sadness, they still had joy. They were the missionaries leading our team. They loved that Japanese people so much, and it was love with action. I need to share this with you. When we say love people, I mean, when I'm in Japan, there's something I can see. Love with action, there's sacrifice. You know, there's a lot of things I can see it. So, in that point, I start thinking maybe love is real. Maybe God is real. Maybe the story I was heard before is real. So over the next few years, God continued to change my heart through attend short-term mission trip. I saw the way that God truly loved people by seeing how missionary treat people, how they love people. And Lord, I want to be like that too. So now, 10 years later, I have become missionary myself and want to spend my life showing my people in Taiwan how God's love is real. It's a blessing for me too, because I become a missionary for my own people. And so today I want to share with you, we say a lot in the church, we love God, we love people, but sometimes we don't have action. So we have to care careful about this. You know, we sing a lot of beautiful songs, worship songs, but when we say we love people, hey man, you need to be careful about what you say that. You need to take action when you say that. When you say you love God, you have to take action. Or you will see a lot of people like me, they went to church, but no relationship with God. So I want to share my story to you and encourage you to take some action. Love looks like something. Love is something you can see. Thank you. And then I think Shekino can share more.
Oh, we're getting better at that. Yeah. So my husband's life was changed when he saw the real love of Jesus lived out by missionaries. And not only did it attract him, but it made him want to live his life in the same way. And I really want to emphasize this morning that when we begin to sense and feel the love that God has for people, and that love becomes your own, it does change your life. The problem I have found, though, is a lot of times, or sometimes I should say, our involvement in missions comes due to reasons other than love. For example, I mentioned one of the common reasons is the sense of duty. Now, this is a good reason to do missions, but it's not the best. Then there's other reasons. Sometimes we'll build our life, our missions work is built on guilt. You know, if I don't do missions, I'm a terrible person because, you know, I'm blessed and I have a lot, so I should share it. Or you know, and then there's, what other reasons do we got here? You know, our emotions. Maybe you attend a service and you hear all the statistics and the needs and you get emotionally stirred, and so you respond to missions and you start doing things for missions. And while not all these reasons are entirely bad, the fact is that a life of missions built on any other foundation other than love is exhausting, and it's hard to sustain, and it will often lead to frustration. You know, in my own life and call to missions, I remember when I was little and God first called me to Taiwan, and I was so passionate, you know, and I felt God's love for the people. But over time, I think a lot due to my personality, I really started emphasizing in my heart, okay, this is my duty, I have to go, you know, I'm being obedient to God, which was good. But I found that once I got to Taiwan, when I was still running on the duty and obligation, it was almost like there was a pressure on my shoulders. Because the need was so overwhelming. I mean, let's think about Taiwan for a minute. I think I have a picture of Taiwan. The need, what is the needs here in Taiwan? This is our mission field, right? This is where we're living and serving and working right now. We're a country of about 23 million people where, you know, around 95% of people don't know Jesus. That is 22 million people that still need to hear. You can go outside here, meet 100 people, and 95 of them will not know Jesus. And the other 5 could be like David, where they go to church, but maybe not even an authentic, real relationship with Jesus. And then, you know, we have one of the highest divorce rates in Asia. There's broken families. There's political issues that are going on, and just all kinds of stuff. And honestly, for me as a missionary, when I see the need, it can completely overwhelm me. I mean, where do you even begin to start to reach? And if me as a missionary, if me as a Christian, if I am doing the work fueled on, okay, this is my duty, I have to do it, I need to work harder, that is hard to sustain. It's overwhelming. It leads to frustration, because what happens when I work really hard and I don't see the results? But the one thing that has sustained me for the last 9 years, and God is helping me to grow in, and I know it will sustain me for the rest of my life here, is learning how to genuinely love and be interested in people. When I walk out of my house and I see my neighbor and I greet them, and feeling and sensing the love that God has for people sustains me in the highs and lows of ministry, in the highs and lows of life, because I know that Jesus loves the people here, and his love for people is becoming my love for people. Because again, missions built on any other foundation but love is exhausting, overwhelming, and not very effective. So I want to ask us, I want us to really just think for a few minutes in here this morning, what would it look like if you and me truly loved the world? Let me break it down a little. What would it look like if we loved our neighbor, our boss, our coworker, our family members, especially those that maybe don't know Jesus? What would that look like? And maybe if you're in a place right now where you can't really say, I really love those people, what would it look like to start to grow in your love for people? What would it take to begin to cultivate a heart that is truly interested in people and cares about people? So that missions is no longer, a box you check off every day that you have to do, but it becomes the natural outflow of your life. I want to share just a couple thoughts with you of things that have helped me over the years as I continue to cultivate a heart that truly loves people. And one of the biggest things, and I think I have it on here, is to seek God's perspective on people. Now, most of you in here know that if you're a Christian, it's a good thing to pray. It's a good thing to pray for people and pray, oh, God, help me to love people like you do. These are wonderful prayers. But what I'm talking about is really building an intentional habit to seek God's heart for people every single day. When you're actually interacting with people, sometimes like pausing in your spirit and asking God, how do you feel about this person? How do you love them? Pause until you can start to sense God's favor and love for them. This is something I've started to practice in my life, especially when I run into people that maybe aren't the easiest to love, people that frustrate me. And when when you start thinking about them or you're having a conversation, to intentionally quiet my spirit and say, God, just fill me up with the way you feel about this person. Fill me up with your affection for this person. And honestly, I have been astounded at how well it works, about how quickly God responds to that prayer. I've even been trying to now extend this habit to when I preach. As a missionary, it's in my job description that I preach at churches. So this is very easy for it to become just a work-related thing. And I can go through my notes and do my sermon and not really even think about God's incredible love and affection for the people that I'm speaking to and how desperately he wants to move in their lives. And so this is something else I'm trying to develop now. Okay, before I speak at a church, wherever I am, to just look at the people for a while and think how much God loves every person. God, fill me up with all your thoughts and emotions and love for the people in this room. And again, it is amazing how quickly God answers that prayer. Because I want you guys to know in here this morning that God's goal for you in life is not just to do all the right things, but it's to start to think like him, to love like him, to feel like him, so that we are like Jesus. Seek his perspective on people. And another quick thing, this is very practical but hard to do. As you seek his perspective, remember to speak well of people. Now, what I mean by this, is developing a habit in your life where, as my mom would say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Because words are powerful. And when we start speaking things out, negative things over other people, you may have felt they were okay to begin with, but it will affect your love for that person. It'll affect your affection for them. But when you do the opposite, when you intentionally speak well of people, especially those that maybe you don't naturally get along with well, it'll grow a love for that person within your spirit. The Bible tells us this too in Ephesians 4:29. Some of you guys may be familiar. It says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. God really taught me this lesson. It was about 5 years ago when I finished my first 4-year term of service here in Taiwan. And I went back to the United States for my first furlough. And during this time, I was traveling to churches and sharing about Taiwan. And I'd already been there 4 years. I had served. I'd done the language thing. And I just felt, okay, I really love Taiwan. I really love Taiwan, but maybe I can do better. So I remember I prayed one day, and I'm like, God, how can I be a better missionary? What am I missing? What can I grow in? And I was very, very surprised what God said. He said, don't talk bad about people. And then God continued to reveal a few things in my heart. And for those of you who are Taiwanese in here, I'm sorry, because this is embarrassing for me. But there are times in my missionary service where maybe in the stress of living cross-culturally, I might get with other expats and I'd say things, stereotypes, and maybe about the driving or cultural issues that frustrated me. But even though it wasn't outright mean, it was negative. And God was calling me out on it. And even sometimes with Taiwanese friends, I'd say, you Taiwanese are, this and this and this and this. And it was actually affecting my ability to love them in a greater way. And God said, stop doing that. Don't say anything about Taiwanese people that you wouldn't say in front of them. If you really, really love people. And it was hard. It hit me in the heart because, I'm like, God, I thought I was doing good, but okay, I'm going to do better, and I'm going to love better, and I'm going to intentionally speak well of all the people here and people I interact with because I want to love the way that you love. Friends, we need to use our words to build people up and to cultivate a love and appreciation for them, maybe even before we like them in particular. When we intentionally speak well of them, God will grow a love in us for people. There's a lot more ways I could talk about this morning, ways that we can cultivate love for people, whether it's, giving grace to people, praying for people's needs, and many other things. But the point I really want to make in here this morning is that missions is meant to be the natural result of a genuine love for people. Because when you really, really love people, when you really love your boss and your family and your friends, no one has to tell them about Jesus. When you really love people and you're concerned for the world, I don't have to convince you to give in the offering we're going to take here in a little bit. When we really love the world, the work of missions will become the greatest joy of your life, and it'll become a natural outflow of everything you do. Friends, we are called to cultivate a love for people so that everyone will hear, to become people persons, people that are interested in people, and a missional life will flow from you. Now, it may not mean tomorrow you're packing your bags and moving to another country, or it might. If it does, I'll help you pack. But it will mean changing the way you interact with people, interacting in new ways. It will mean putting other people's needs before yourself. Maybe showing more respect to your boss and coworkers. Maybe spending more time with your family that you're not getting along with well right now. Or praying for someone the moment you hear that they have a needs. Because that's what it means to love people and truly be interested in them. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to say a quick prayer over you guys, and then we're going to have a time for the offering and missions pledges, and then I'm going to come back and I have one final challenge for you guys in here this morning.